Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark Boughton. I'm Commissioner of the Department of Revenue Services. Today, it's my honor and privilege to be able to present to you a series of tax cuts that have been put together by Governor Lamont and our team. We believe that these tax cuts are broad, they are far-reaching. They total close to $300 million that we're going to be putting back in the taxpayers' pocket. And most importantly, these tax cuts are immediate. People will actually feel those cuts in 2022. So we're really excited about it. We are pumped up about it. I want to thank Governor Lamont for honoring his commitment to the taxpayers of this state by coming up with a broad and far-reaching plan. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Secretary McCaw, the leader of our team when it comes to finances. So, Madam Secretary, if you could walk us through it.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Boughton, and thank you for joining us here today. Very excited to preview the tax relief package that Governor Lamont will be proposing in the fiscal 2023 midterm budget. One of our moderators might support with putting a slide on the screen, but I'm going to start to walk through the details of the package. As Commissioner Boughton indicated, this is $336 million of tax relief to constituents across the state of Connecticut. And it's comprised of about four major provisions. First, on the property tax credit, the governor is proposing to restore full eligibility for the property tax credit. And so the property tax credit currently is limited to those who are 65 years and older or individuals that have dependents. And so the current law plans for the tax credit to revert to that full eligibility, basically opening up to all individuals that have income up to $107,500 if you're a single filer, or up to $130,500 if you're a joint filer. And that's scheduled to expand to the full eligible population starting in fiscal year 2024. Governor Lamont is proposing to make that happen now. That is a $53 million revenue impact, and it will benefit an additional 500,000 individuals in the state of Connecticut, bringing that benefit to 1.1 million people. In addition, the governor is taking the existing $200 property tax credit, and he's proposing to increase it to $300. And that is a $70 million revenue impact. We have seen the property tax credit range over the years. We have not seen it at a $300 tax credit for a significant period of time. So this is a $123 million that will go back into the hands of Connecticut taxpayers. Turning to the pension and annuities, currently in law, the plan was to accelerate, the plan was that by 2025, our pension and annuity income would be fully exempt for our taxpayers. And the governor is proposing to make that exemption fully exempt now. This benefits 180,000 filers or 250,000 persons. The impact of this is $43 million in tax relief. The third proposal that the governor will be including in his budget package is pertaining to the student loan tax credit program that is currently offered through CHESLA. And so under this program, businesses can choose to participate, and they are eligible for a 50% employer tax credit on up to $5,250 in student loan payments. The governor, and currently the program is limited to existing participants that have refinanced CHESLA loans. The governor's broadening the program. Anyone who currently has a CHESLA loan will be eligible for the program if their employer chooses to participate. We believe that this is about a $9.4 million investment. This is getting at the heart of our workforce development and making Connecticut a place that is attractive to stay and work, and supporting those individuals and remaining here in state. This proposal, it will benefit up to 32,000 CHESLA borrowers. And then finally, the governor is proposing to lower the mill rate cap. Connecticut taxes on property vary from town to town. So currently in law, no municipality can have a mill rate on car taxes greater than 45 mils. And the goal was to lower the tax burden. The governor is proposing to reduce that cap to 29 mils, so from 45 to 29 mils. This will actually provide property tax relief for an additional 1.7 million vehicles. 103 towns currently have a mill rate above 29. So significant impact across the state of Connecticut. Again, putting tax relief in the hands of taxpayers. It's real and tangible. You will notice this in your next car tax bill. This applies to passenger vehicles, commercial vehicles, and combination vehicles. So the items that you have before you today, they are $336 million in tax relief. I will note that because Connecticut is using some of our federal resources from the American Rescue Plan Act, there are provisions that limit the amount of tax relief we can execute if we are using these temporary dollars to balance our budget. So the package that is before you recognizes those limitations and still provides the maximum amount of tax relief that we can within those restrictions. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to our leader, Governor Ned Lamont.
All right, thanks, Melissa and Mark. And first of all, Melissa, we wouldn't be able to do this without you and OPM navigating us through the last 3 years, taking a deficit, turning it into a surplus, where we now have some organic growth that allows us to provide significant tax relief to the people of Connecticut because we've earned it. Everybody always promises tax cuts, details to follow. Melissa's responsible for the details, and she'll be telling exactly to the legislature how we plan to pay for this and keep within all the parameters that we've got to. We're doing everything we can to make Connecticut more affordable. Daycare and childcare, big expansion there, so you can afford to get back to work. Healthcare, we've held the line on healthcare costs in a way that we haven't seen in many years. And with the expansion of subsidies on the exchange, healthcare is virtually at no cost to everybody earning less than 50 or 60,000. Then it's limited from there. So we're doing everything we can in terms of those items that take your family out of pocket every day to make it a little more affordable. When it comes to education, when it comes to a college scholarship, when it comes to workforce or community college, we've done everything we can to hold down those costs, reduce those costs, to make sure people have that opportunity. But that takes us back to taxes. And we're doing what we can. As Melissa said, under federal law, you're only allowed to cut taxes up to a certain amount, given the parameters of the federal money we received. But I think we're making a difference. Look, over the last couple of years already, for the first time, our overall mill rate statewide across 169 towns has gone down. That doesn't happen very often, let me tell you. It's gone down because of higher valuations, a little more construction going on, a bigger pie reduces the tax rate, and that's good. But we want to do more than that right now, and that's the property tax credit that you heard Melissa describe, expanding that to absolutely everybody, increasing the tax credit by about 50% from $200 to $300. The property tax is pretty relentless. You pay it in good times, you pay it in bad times. It particularly hits the middle class hard, and we're doing everything we can to mitigate that, as best we can. And on the lowering the mill rate, let me tell you what that means when it comes to cars. It's just insane the way it's set up right now that, you could have a Honda in Hartford and you're paying higher property tax on it than you are for a Hummer in Heartland or Harwington. And that's just the nature of the fact that you have a higher property tax rate in some of our cities than you do in other places because they don't have the same tax base. So thanks to Melissa and the efforts of our policy team, we're going to be able to significantly reduce that gap, represent a 30-40% cut in your car tax. And I'd like to think that that makes a significant difference. The final one up there you see on the screen is a student loan tax credit. I'm doing everything I can to make sure the best and the brightest are getting educated here in the state of Connecticut, stay in the state of Connecticut, and doing what I can to help out our businesses as well, especially the small businesses. So right now, if you're graduating from Connecticut school, you have a real incentive to stay here in Connecticut because you go to a Connecticut-based business, and our tax cut says that we're going to give you a credit. I think it's up to $32.50 per year, 50% credit to our businesses that start to forgive your student loan. I'd like to think that it helps our small businesses. It's a refundable credit, and it also reminds our students, stick around Connecticut. There are really good opportunities here, and you can graduate over a period of time not having to pay any student debt. But Melissa, we wouldn't have been able to do it without your stewardship, managing us through these last 3 years. Look where we've come from $3 to $4 billion deficit to figuring out how we can appropriately invest our surplus, starting with tax cuts. And that's what you'll be presenting to all the appropriate committees starting probably tomorrow. Back to you guys.
Okay, if you'd like to ask a question, please use the raise hand function. We'll start with the Waterbury Republican American.
Okay, so you're going to be proposing to pay for this $336 million tax relief with state surplus funds with the nearly $1.5 billion estimated 2022 surplus?
No, Paul,
Did I
we
hear
are,
that?
thank you, Paul. We are proposing this in the fiscal year 2023 midterm budget adjustments. This will be reflected in our revenue projections. So we're actually doing this through general fund projected revenues. This is in part a tax supported through a tax package, right? So the property tax adjustments, the pension annuity, the student loan tax credits will be reflected as reductions in revenue, but the motor vehicle mill rate cap is really an expenditure, right? So we will be reimbursing municipalities for the difference between any mill rate above 29. And so that will be reflected as an appropriation in next year's budget.
Okay. And could I ask Commissioner Boughton, can you give us some preliminary information on the tax amnesty that just ended?
Sure. And I just want to emphasize, as Secretary McCaw said, that that reimbursement as a former mayor to cities and towns is critical. The governor is 100% committed to doing that. So for my fellow mayor, ex-mayors and first selectmen that are out there as an ex-mayor, don't worry, we got you covered. You're going to get your money. So let us do this for our residents across Connecticut. In terms of tax amnesty, look, it's been wildly successful. I'm going to throw out a number here, and I'm going to tell you we're going to be north of 150 million by the time it's all done.
Okay, thank you very much.
Did you get that, Paul?
Connecticut
Yes, I did.
Mayor,
Thanks very much.
Keith Faniff.
Thanks. If it's okay, I had a question for Melissa and a question for the governor. If I could start with Secretary McCaw. Could you just clarify, I'm sorry, Melissa, I have two questions for you. The first one's just technical. Could you tell me what tax year the changes with pension and annuity would take effect?
So it's going to be fiscal year 23, so income year 22.
Income year 22. Okay. And just staying with you, Melissa, my follow-up, could you talk a little bit more about just how much flexibility we do or don't have to cut taxes and where you would see sort of the limit on what our annual tax expenditure would be because of the federal money? Because when the governor was before CBIA last month, he said he probably thought we were looking at maybe no more than 300 million in tax relief. Where do you see the limit as to what we can or can't cut?
Thanks, Keith. So the governor was spot on, the 250 to 300 million. So under the Treasury guidance, there are two tests. First, states can cut taxes up to 1% of revenues. That is called the 1% de minimis rule. And so every year, that would be recalculated based on our projected revenues. The 1% de minimis is right around the $250 million mark. If states do not comply with that 1% de minimis, the second test is what's called the organic growth test, where you look at the level of revenue growth compared to fiscal 2019. You have to factor in tax cuts that are already underway, and Connecticut does have some tax cuts that are already reflected in current law. And you'd have to demonstrate that you have sufficient organic growth to make cuts that are basically above that 1% de minimis. That puts us in the $250 to $300 million mark. We will obviously have to reassess when we do April consensus revenues. The package the governor submits, we believe, will be compliant.
Okay, and just also to clarify that, I'm assuming the way we calculate our revenues, all the money that's captured by the volatility adjustment, that actually wouldn't factor in. If anything, we don't consider that to be general fund revenue.
So for purposes of calculating it under Treasury guidance, our volatility cap revenues are included.
I'm sorry, are or are not?
They are included.
They are. Okay. Just one last question. Governor Lamont, on the campaign trail in 2018, you had another element to your property tax plan. You were going to do a targeted credit, particularly for low-income households, those that had to spend at least 6.5% of their income on property taxes. They were going to get a credit, an average of about $700, some as high as $1,200. That was half your plan in terms of the cost of it. Why did you choose not to go forward with that component today?
I think we're prioritizing the earned income tax credit, Keith. We did that last year. We're going to do that again this year, going up to about 41% of what the feds offer. That virtually eliminates the income tax liability for anybody earning up to 40, close to $50,000. I think we want to do everything we can to incent people to get back to work. And I think the earned income tax credit is another way to make sure we offer real relief to those folks who need it most.
Just as one last follow, Governor, and I could have missed this. Are you talking about in your budget proposing using state funds to boost the EITC to 41% of the federal?
Yes.
I'm just curious, why is that not included in what you're rolling out today?
The state funds that the governor's referencing are ARPA dollars that have been allocated to the state. So we are going to use our ARPA our ARPA dollars. Again, this is economic assistance to individuals. It's about $40 million investment, and we will be reflecting that in our ARPA allocation plan.
And then just to clarify then, Melissa, we're talking about something because ARPA expires after 2024. This is a temporary increase in tax relief for the working poor.
Well, we're going to use one-time funds, and we will have to reevaluate the extent to which the EITC economic assistance benefit can continue in the future. Yes, the governor is including that as a one-time. We did it in December, so this will be the second year in a row that the governor's been able to provide this additional economic assistance.
Thank you. Sorry for all the questions.
Thanks, Keith.
First Connecticut Media.
Thanks. Either for the secretary or the governor, if you could explain how you guys reached the 29 mills, and then more for the governor, there's been calls over the years to get rid of the, car tax. So why not go that route?
You start, Melissa.
Well, the governor has been very clear to his team that property tax relief is a priority for him for the state of Connecticut. When you look at the fiscal note of eliminating the car tax, recognizing that towns would need the state to backfill that revenue loss, the amount to fund that wasn't cost prohibitive. The expenditure on the mill rate to cover the lost revenues that towns would receive, it is subject to the spending cap. So we do have spending cap limitations. A significant portion of the governor's investments in the general fund, you will see, are going to benefit people throughout the state through the motor vehicle proposal.
And I'm trying to provide tax cuts that are sustainable. I can, eliminate it, and then sometimes it comes back. You don't know what the revenues are going to be. I think we put in place a significant cut in the car tax that serves the vast majority of our people, makes it a lot fairer and equitable, and we'll see what we can do in the future.
Okay, and one more, Governor, for you off topic. Given that we surpassed 10,000 COVID deaths today, just your thoughts on that,
Yeah, it was not just a bad case of the flu, which you heard some talking about a couple of years ago. We were hit particularly hard 2 years ago. We had some of the more fatalities per capita, along with New Jersey, New York, than anybody else in the country. 2 years later, our fatalities continue to go down as a percentage. We're now making real progress in terms of infections, in terms of hospitalizations, in terms of fatalities. So we've made progress compared to our peers, but that's false comfort. Those are 10,000 of our neighbors who are no longer with us.
Connecticut News Junkie.
Governor, what have you heard from municipalities about this proposal, and how do they feel about it?
Christine, I'm always looking at your screenshot like you're very amused by my response. Here's the deal with municipalities. They can't stand the car tax. It's incredibly disproportionate. It hits some towns much harder than other towns. So I think they generally appreciate the direction we're going. They always worry, oh my God, what happens when the next recession hits? Are we going to be able to maintain where we are? And our hope is we're going to sure as hell try.
Well, I mean, would you be willing to then give them some more tools to raise other types of revenue aside from the property tax?
Well, Christine, let's see where we are. As you know, we did pilot, which is worth, say, $300 million. We got ARPA money, which is, say, worth another $500 million. That continues on. You know, the pilot goes forever. The ARPA goes for another 2.5 years. So I think people are in pretty good shape for the foreseeable future. Then we'll see what the future brings.
And Governor, just one off topic. The Republicans just had a press conference regarding juvenile car thefts and juvenile crime. Is there anything that you could find bipartisan support for to make sure that, these are not victimless crimes in some instances, and that there's an understanding of what is happening here?
Yeah, absolutely, Christine. I look forward to working with the Republican and Democratic leadership. This is something we can do together. This is something we take seriously together. Some of it is regards social service and wraparound for all those first-time offenders who really had a bad couple of years of COVID quarantine, and help them get back on the ground. This is about being really strict with those repeat offenders, some of them gang-related, what that means in terms of cops, what that means in terms of speeding up the arraignments, what that means of making sure they're not back out on the street. We're going to find a reasonable common ground. Democrats and Republicans get something done in this next session.
Thank you.
WFSB.
Hello, Governor. Hello, Melissa. My question is, judging from some of the conversation that, property taxes have been talked about for a long time, and relief, that's certainly been a legislative priority. Are you concerned, though, that this might be perceived as a one-hit wonder? I mean, obviously, you're able to do it because of some of the federal money coming in, but after this election year, you may not be able to continue this or much of it or any of it because Connecticut's economy may not be able to support that kind of a tax break for so many people.
I think we're jump-starting the economies in our towns and municipalities, and that starts with the property tax. That starts with all the small business startup activity. We have hundreds of millions of dollars to help people start up a business in their towns. That's how you start growing the tax base, which I think is so key to our towns and municipalities. Double on top of that, you're right, the transportation funding only goes for, say, 5 years, but turning our cities into major transportation hubs with housing around that. So, yep, I've got a 2-3 year crystal ball in terms of what we see from the feds, but we're making a down payment to do everything we can to expand the grand list and expand opportunities in our towns and cities so they're better able to stand on their own 2 feet.
Do you think realistically any of these proposals will be around a year from now?
I believe they will. But Mark, you want to talk about that, former mayor?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, motor vehicle tax, the reduction, that's an existing program that we're simply expanding. We've already demonstrated an ability to backfill those communities that needed it. So that's the beauty of this, is that these aren't temporary changes. These are immediate. People will see that this year when the auto taxes go out July 1, and they can count on that in years coming out. It does mean that we're going to continue through the governor's direction, continue to modify and change our operations to reflect a 21st century. And we adopted all kinds of new plans, policies, programs, and procedures to do that. So at the end of the day, we fully expect these to stay. These aren't temporary in any way, shape, or form, and they are immediate, which is tremendous for our residents who have suffered during the COVID crisis, who need access to capital. And don't forget that motor vehicle tax impacts commercial vehicles and combination vehicles. A lot of these are small businesses that are landscapers that are out there just trying to make a buck. And we're here to give them a helping hand so they can grow their business and pay more taxes eventually.
Thank you. And Governor, can you just, I wanted to piggyback a little bit on what Christine Stewart, the Republicans have been very vocal in the last few weeks, unveiling their priorities, healthcare and crime and safe streets. Are those two priorities, do you think, for Democrats and for yourself?
I think there's a lot of common ground there.
Okay, and quickly, mask mandates in schools, what's going to happen with that?
Well, if the numbers keep going in the right direction, we're going to have a really robust conversation with the legislature over the next week. Let's see where we are a few days from now, but there could be some changes coming.
Thank you.
Hartford Current.
Yes, hi, thank you. The Governor, I wanted to ask you or Melissa on the 29 mil cap on the property taxes. I believe that's the number that we have, but what is the magic behind 29? How is that fixed, and why 29?
Melissa's age.
That's a good one. Thank you for that, Governor. Look,
Paul uses age.
Before, there you go. There you go. Well, first of all, we had to limit this to the available spending cap room and balancing other priorities. But, given that we're 45, the governor really wanted us to push the limits as far as we could go. We think there's a strong message to tell taxpayers across the Connecticut that we got this to be under 30 mils. It's significant in the amount of relief that they're going to see. And it's something that they recognize, and it will be tangible and felt, in their pockets. And that was the message from the governor is, I want this to be real. I want it to be tangible, and I want people to be able to recognize it. And we did it within the spending cap room that we had available.
Okay, and also I know one thing back to the previous question, and ex-mayor Boughton was saying he expects these things to stay, but I mean the car tax money, if you add it up, if my math is right, the car tax money is more than the property tax credit money when you combine these things together. So in other words, Governor, how long is this sustainability of this? In other words, you're saying, okay, we're going to put it on the books, but what is the long-term sustainability of this?
And Governor, why don't I start and then I'll tip it to you. Look, we saw significant improvement most recently in January with consensus revenues, that Connecticut's economy is very strong. We're outperforming in withholding, we're outperforming in sales and use tax. And we will then update in April, right? We recognize there was likely more revenue to be had in the current fiscal year. We were conservative to get us to April so we can see what tax filings look like. So if we continue on this trajectory, we do feel that these are sustainable adjustments that we can make in our tax policy. And it is for those reasons that the governor is very focused on stimulating the economy so they can be sustained. And that's in workforce, and that's in the student loan program, again, making an attractive place to live, and also in providing these benefits to our current residents of the state of Connecticut, so they feel that Connecticut is an affordable place to live. So the ARPA dollars and the policies the governors are putting in place are really geared to have that return that should continue to bolster our economy, so the progress we're seeing in revenues can continue. So, based on our first looks, we do feel optimistic that these are sustainable. You will also see the governor in his budget proposal reduce reliance on one-time revenues in fiscal year 23, again, making smart, fiscally prudent decisions to keep us on the right course.
I think Melissa said it brilliantly. I'd only add, don't think about these as subsidies and what happens at the end. Think about these as investments that are going to help us grow the economic pie, create more growth and opportunity. So you look back in 2 years, you look back in 5 years, and we got a much expanding economic pie, and that's how we pay for these things going forward.
Okay.
Associated Press.
Thank you. I had a quick question about how the mill rate cap would work. Would communities have to make like an annual pitch or a case for how much money they would want the state to backfill them? How would it work?
So no, they don't have to make an annual pitch because municipalities by law are required to submit to OPM their grand list and their mill rate. So we have that information to calculate based on their grand list value and at their current mill rate. And by changing that to 29, what the actual tax loss, revenue loss would be to those towns. We do that currently, and we would continue that and just factor in that it's a lower mill rate. And that is municipal aid that goes out throughout the state, and OPM administers that on an annual basis.
Okay, great. Thank you. And various Republicans, Governor, have proposed sales tax cuts to help people deal with inflation. Is that an area that you are considering? Do any of these proposals help address the challenges people are facing with inflation?
Oh, absolutely. This is more money in your pocket, allows you, be it property tax, be it car tax, be it pensions, pensions up to 100,000 now tax-free. These all are ways to make Connecticut more affordable and give you a few extra bucks in your pocket to allow you to pay for things. Look, the sales tax, we have on the sales tax, I mean, some of that's paid for by out-of-staters. I'm providing tax relief right here and now for just Connecticut payers. I think that makes an enormous difference. And our sales tax rate, we can adjust a lot of things, but I think this is targeted investments to make the biggest difference in our people's lives.
And Governor, I would just add to that Connecticut sales tax rate is very moderate. We're at 33 out of 50 across the states. We're lower than New York and New Jersey and essentially tied with Massachusetts. We do feel that it's important to note out how we compare against our surrounding states.
Yeah, people don't leave Connecticut because of our sales tax, right?
Will there be any changes to the sales tax at all, or no? I don't know if there'll be more things we'll see in the budget.
Nothing planned at this point, but we still have to sit down with the legislative leadership.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
CT Public.
Hi, Governor. Shifting back to school masking, you mentioned to a reporter at News 12 yesterday that might shift to local control. Can you expand on that?
Pete, you want to translate that for me?
We're getting a lot of background noise. Is that Jackie? Can you ask your question again, please?
Hi, yeah, sorry about the noise. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yep.
Awesome. So my question is about school masking. And yesterday you mentioned you got it?
I got it. Thank you. Yes, that would be the option. Look, my executive powers in that space are coming up to a vote. It's going to happen in the next, week, 10 days or so in the legislature. We've given them, we used to have 300 plus executive orders. Now we've narrowed it down to, I think it's 11. One of them involves, masking, and we're taking a good hard look at the numbers and going to make up our minds, say, in less than a week, and how much flexibility to give to our towns and municipalities. And I think that's coming.
Thank you. That's all for me.
And that concludes questions.
Mark, Melissa, thank you. Thanks, everybody.